Hi everyone, Karen Danielle, and I am thrilled to be here with all of you this week. And I wanted to talk to you today about what it is that you need to be relentless about in order to set yourself apart. There's every industry out there, there's tons of competition these days, right? And why are you in business to do what you do? What makes who you are special? How do you set yourself apart? Whether you're the best at what you do, the most creative, the most innovative, there's something that you do better than anyone else. And once you know that, and you should know that, once you know that, how then can you commit to it and show that commitment and get all of your team members on board to do it also? Because that's the key, right? We want to make sure that everyone gets it, because you need a village. You can't do this all on your own. So how can you cultivate a culture that also exhibits how that unique thing sets you apart? Okay, so a great example that I wanted to give you to make this a little bit more clear is time watches, right? We all know time watches. And specifically, Time International has spent numerous years in being very successful at cultivating their mission. Now, you would think just by what I said, time watches, that their mission is to provide maybe the best watch piece on this planet, which is true, but there's also something else that actually takes it a step further for Time. And Matthew Mendelssohn's the gentleman that's kind of spearheaded this project over there a few years ago, and he's been incredibly successful at it. And it has taken some time, but he was relentless about making this happen. And what Matthew says is time is here to make special people feel exceptional. Now that, my friends, is much different and much more powerful than providing a great watch. What Matthew wants is when you look at your time watch, you have that same feeling, that zing feeling, that excitement, that thrill, and you can't put a price on that. It's priceless, that experience, that feeling. And he has that created. In order to create that, it begins from when you walk through the door to when you leave, and the follow-up after that, and then it continues every time you look at that watch. And I know what he's talking about because I actually get the same feeling when I look at these earrings. They're a special thing for me, so I know that feeling that Matthew is cultivating over at Time International. And that is what sets him apart. That's what sets Time apart. That is what they have committed to. So once you know what that it is for your company, then you need to figure out how to get people accountable, how to get people on board. And that's what we're going to talk about next, okay? Because it's one thing to say that you want people to feel special when they buy your product, and it's another thing to have a system in place to ensure that it happens. Because talking about it's one thing, backing it up with processes and systems is a commitment to making it happen. Okay, so here's what Time does. Whenever we think of sales, right, because that's kind of the foundation or first layer, if you will, of what Time is doing. It's a sales thing, right? So they have salespeople. When you think of sales and how you determine if it's successful, you look at numbers. Are our sales higher than last quarter? Are our sales better than they were last year? What do the numbers tell me? Well, if you've been following my work at all, you know that I believe very firmly that numbers are a small piece of the puzzle, right? There has to be something more going on there for this to be a long-lasting business. And what Time does, in order to kind of track a feeling, because that's very abstract, how are you going to figure out how you're making your customers feel? What Time does is, like many companies, they'll have a feedback survey of the guest experience, right? And there'll be kind of black and white questions on there, but there's a lot of questions dedicated to whether or not the team member had them feeling that special feeling. How did they cultivate that? Okay, So that's a whole nother metric system that they take into consideration. So they take the time to make sure it's measured. And they also, and here's what I love, because this is them truly walking the walk. This is them holding their people accountable in a concrete way for an abstract thing. Those surveys, those feedback pieces of information that they get from the client experience, those results are then linked to that team member's commission. That's how much Time believes in that non-negotiable experience. That's how much they are committed to making sure that people on their team are dedicated to making that happen. Their performance is linked to their lifestyle, their income, right? You can't get any more concrete than that. And rather than it be a bonus, because lots of times that's what kind of that feeling, that extra special thing is. It's like a bonus. Companies will do that as an extra add-on. No, Time has committed that that is actually part of your baseline performance. It's part of your foundation as an employee there. You need to be able to satisfy that in order to be successful at Time. And I really commend and applaud that approach, because it's quite creative in a way, because like I said, they're committing to that metric and to that, to the point where you're financially held responsible for it, right? Now, here's the thing. How does that tie in with creating a self-sufficient team, creating ownership, creating responsibility? Well, think about it. What Time does is they do, like we always talk about in here, they give that team member a destination. Create a special feeling for our clients. Have them have an exemplary feeling, an exemplary service experience. It's not just a transaction, it's an experience. If you do that, you're fine by us. So what it does, it gives the team member all of the power. It gives them the ability to make decisions that will get that customer to that experience. They have flexibility, they have tools, they have training to support how to make that happen, and they give it all to the employee. They can do whatever they need to do. There's guideposts there, right? There's obviously some guidelines along the way. There's some bumpers to kind of create the proper exchange, if you will. But it's all up to the employee to make it happen. And it creates this new entrepreneurial spirit. It shifts the mindset from being, I just want to talk about how great this watch is so I can get your money in exchange for a product, to a feeling, an experience, and a mindset. And that is a whole nother level of a commitment to that non-negotiable of that feeling, to make special people feel extraordinary. I gotta say, it's one of the most progressive ways of doing business that I've seen in a long time, where you take that salesy, icky feeling we all get when we think of commissioned salespeople, and it pulls it right out of it. It takes all that right out, and instead it injects the feeling that they want you to have, which is a thrill, which is, extraordinary. It's literally the word that they use. And again, it's something that they have become very creative about. So once you know what your it is that sets you apart, that makes you unique, that makes you proud, it's not just that first layer. It's not just being able to have a client or have a customer look at the watch and tell time. That's layer one. What's more important than that? What are you looking to try and accomplish that takes it to that next level? How are you making people feel special? How are you being the best in the business? How are you the most creative? How are you the most innovative? Whatever that it is for you, how can you get your team to give them the power to make it happen? Okay? I applaud Time. I applaud Matthew Mendelson and his approach to this. And I hope all of you can just think about that for a little bit, because it's one of those that you may not figure out overnight. But if it's that important to you and to your company, and you're playing a long-term game, kind of like the infinite game of business, right? There is no real endpoint, then it's worth thinking about. It's worth being creative on coming up ways to make it happen. Okay? And I wish you the best of luck in making it happen. If you are looking for some guidance, go to my website and you can always download the Leaders Checklist, which shows you 4 ways to create teams that go into battle for you. Karen Danielle here. Have a great day, everybody, and get out there and make it happen. Thanks so much. Love you guys.